Okay, so for this month's tax tips, we're going to look at the tax treatment of the various government support grants that have been issued over the last 18 months as part of the support packages made available to businesses who've been forced to close or have had their trade significantly impacted by COVID. All of the tax treatment for these grants is going to follow the accounting treatment. And so for this month only, Lee has joined me in tax tips to help navigate us through the various treatment of these things. So hi, Lee.
Hi, Mark. Enjoying my little tax tip cameo here?
Yeah, make the most of it. You won't be coming again. So yeah, like I say, the tax treatment is going to follow the accounting treatment. We've got various grants to cover. There's the self-employed income support grant. There's the CGRS grants, where any business furloughing staff has received at least 80% of the wages for the vast majority of the time they've been furloughed. And we've also got what I suppose we'll loosely call the business rate support grants that have basically been paid out via the business rates system by the local councils. Just for clarity, obviously C-bills and B-bills, the bounce back loans, the C-bills loans, they are loans and not grants, and therefore not taxable at all. So we are just going to focus on SEIS, CGRS, and business rates loans. So Lee, over to you. The accounting treatment is the bit that needs to come first. So if you could guide us through that, then that'll give us the tax treatment that we need.
Sure. So I mean, for all entities, the CGRS claims and the business relief claims are going to fall under the grants accounting treatment. And this isn't new legislation. This has always been within the FRS 102, section 24, for those that want to read up on it. And fundamentally, that breaks down grants into two categories. Those that are measured on the performance basis and those that are measured on the accruals basis. The difference between them is basically the performance basis. There is a preset range of criteria that you must meet before you can recognise the grant income. And the accrued one, you just basically release the grant or recognise the grant when the income or expenditure to which it relates is incurred. So for these grants from HMRC, they all effectively, now there is some chatter about whether this is right or wrong, but effectively the majority of the accounting professional bodies agree that these meet the performance criteria, and therefore we need to recognise the grant in the accounts at the time they became eligible. And that's the bit that's important, because it's not really when you've received the money, it's when the money was effectively available to you. The best example of this is the furlough claim. So the March furlough claim was triggered in March. That's your staff payroll costs. You incurred them in March. The furlough grant that you received was relating to that period, and therefore we need to recognise the income in March, albeit you've probably received it in April. A little bit of a timing difference there then in terms of the grants received from an accounting point of view. You effectively are going to pay tax a little bit earlier, but the timings from HMRC have usually been quite good in terms of when you've received the money compared to when you were technically due the money.
Okay, thanks, Lee. So from a company point of view, we're going to be having some adjustments in accounts, aren't we, really, with showing CGRS grants especially common. They're going to be effectively wherever somebody's year end cuts off, you've used March there, we're going to be putting money received in April back into March, aren't we, basically?
We're going to have an accrued income line in these accounts, yeah, just to recognise that income that you've not yet received, I'm afraid.
Right, fine, thanks for that. So to move on to the SEIS grant and effectively contradict everything that Lee's just said, the SEIS grant is taxable when it's received. Now, for the first SEIS grant, I imagine you receive that in June or July. And so most self-employed individuals, sole traders, often run their accounts up to the end of the tax year, or 31st of March, which is very close to the end of the tax year, which is 5th of April. And so you won't really have much of a problem in accounting for income received and aligning it with a tax year. One of the complexities we'll have is for a business, whether it's a sole trader or a partnership, that doesn't run its accounts to the anywhere near the end of the tax year. So as an example, for the first SEIS grant, if you declare your accounts normally up to the 31st of May, you might do a set of accounts the 31st of May 2021 and receive your SEIS grant in June 2021, and therefore expect to account for that income in the next accounting year, which is 31st of May 2022. Now, the consequence of that would be that you wouldn't tax that income receipt until the tax year ended 5th of April 23, and therefore pay the tax on it on the 31st of January after that date. The government have said that actually you can't do that. And even though your accounting year runs at 31st of May and you receive the income in June, you must ensure that if you received an SEIS grant in an income tax year, so in my example here, we've received it in June 21, therefore the income is the relevant income tax year is the tax year to 5th of April 2022, we must account for it in that year. Now, obviously, it won't form part of your accounts because the accounts will have been drawn up to 31st of May. And so the government have recognised that and added an extra box on the self-assessment tax return to allow us to declare this self-employed grant separately to anything else that would normally go through your accounts. It is a point to watch out there for, especially as we go further into the year. All of the SEIS grants that people have received throughout this year to 5th of April 2021 will all fall for taxable in that year, and therefore will have to pay the tax by 31st of January 2022. We therefore need, as part of the self-assessment process, if you haven't already sent us your tax return information, we will need to know which grants, if any, you've applied for and successfully received, and the amount that you've received, so we can ensure it's included in your tax return this year.